In this video, we are going to look at the invoice module. It's a new module for CoreStore that allows you to have customer and supplier invoices. This video, we are just going to look at the customer invoices, and then we'll have another video on supplier invoices. So the invoice module allows you to actually create open invoices for customers. You can set up terms of payments on invoices, and you can have a default terms, for a particular customer. You can even have a default term in the entire system, and I'll show you how to set this up. But first of all, you will now see an invoice module on the left side. If you don't see that, make sure you sign in as an administrator and go to your employee and make sure that you enable access to the invoice module. And that's just checking the box under the employee, and you can just search for the invoice module. Now, if you have the invoice module and it's way on the bottom of the screen, you can quickly go into the store configuration and move any one of these. You can move up and down. If you use something more frequently, you may want to move it up so you're not constantly searching for it. To do that, you just go into the store configuration under modules, and you can just move these around. So nice little tips. If I wanted to move invoices above work orders, I can do that. Hit save, and then you'll see that once you refresh, the invoice module is now above the work order module. So that's a nice little tip. Now let's go ahead and look at our options for store accounts. So again, if I scroll down, I've got a whole section for store accounts, which allows you to create invoices. Since we're talking about customers, let's just look at those settings. You want to make sure that you enable customer store accounts. So that has to be checked. I would recommend checking this option to create an invoice for any sale where the payment type is a store account charge. Right? So when you're in the sales screen, if you choose store account, typically you'll want to create an invoice. Now, you can also set a default credit limit. I'm not going to set one because most of my customers don't have a credit limit. But if most of your customers have credit limits, you can definitely set those up. And then we've got some options for the supplier invoices, and we'll go through those when we do the supplier invoice video. All right, we can also disable the store account when the customer's over their credit limit. So that's an option. We've got a store account statement message that will appear on a statement that's printed. You can also hide store account payments from both your reports and your report totals if you want to hide them, and that way you can reconcile just your cash, credit card, and check payment types. Again, I recommend keeping it on, but it's totally up to you. So we'll go ahead and save our store configuration options, and let's go through and show you how an invoice gets created from a sale. So I'll go ahead and choose an item. In this case, it's a box of ammunition. Actually, I'll change it to 10 boxes. And I can choose my customer. I'll just choose myself. And at this point, I'm going to choose store account as the payment type, and I'll go ahead and add the payment, and I'll complete the sale. So prior to this, we supported store accounts, but you had to suspend the transaction, which really doesn't make sense because the sale is complete, and now you've got really an invoice that's open with this particular customer. Now the really neat feature is that you have the ability to send an email to the customer with a link for them to make a payment, right? And to do that, I'll just point out that when you're entering the sale, you just want to make sure that the customer first and foremost has an email address. But then there's one other thing you want to do. You want to make sure that this first option, create CoreStore e-commerce online account, is checked. Now, one caveat is that for store payments, online payments to work, you do need to use the CoreClear merchant services. So if you're not using CoreClear, you can contact us and we can set you all up. Contact sales@coreware.com or give us a call. Our number's on our website. And we'll be glad to help you. If we can't beat your current rates, we will pay you $500. No strings attached. No strings attached. It's a little early in the morning here. If only I could speak straight. But definitely would be glad to help review your statements. There's no obligation to do that. So if you are using CoreClear, the beauty is these invoices will show up on the customer payment portal, which is really nice. All right, so let me show you the invoice that just got created. Again, I can go into my invoice module and I'll go under customers, and you'll see I've got two invoices. One is the current one for the 423.89, and one actually is for 190.69. This first one has a balance open. You'll also notice the balance open is showing on my bucket here for what's due 30 days or more. What's overdue, right? So this is showing me my overdue payments or overdue invoices, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and 120 days. So I can see that this particular customer is late by a few days on their invoice number one, and then invoice number two is what I created today. So a few things here. I can edit this invoice, I can pay the invoice, I can view the invoice. So you'll notice here that I don't have any terms. Probably the customer is not set up with terms, and I'll show you that in a minute. But we can go ahead and edit this invoice and simply choose terms. I've got a net 30 terms and a net 60 terms. And you can set up your own terms, and that's done in the invoice screen. I'll show you where. You can also enter a PO number for this invoice. So if you've got a customer that is basically a company and they use purchase order numbers, you'll want to enter that purchase order number for reference. So I can go ahead and hit save. You'll see below this information, we also show any recent unpaid orders. We also show the details for this particular invoice. And you'll notice that the invoice details, the order ID, the total, I can optionally enter a description for this invoice if I want to, and I can also enter an account. That's for future accounting purposes. Right, if the customer comes in and makes a payment, I can just click the pay button right here. And in this case, let's say they're paying me partially. You pay me $50 additional. I can hit submit. Again, that can be a credit card payment, cash, or however they're paying you. And at this point, you'll notice that back to my invoice, this is my payment receipt. Back to my invoice, you'll see that now I've got a balance of $373.89. Now, just like I made a payment at the store, the customer can sign into the payment portal. Again, as long as you check that box, they will receive an email that provides them with a link to view their orders, their order history, and make payments on layaways, invoices, and any open orders that are in the system. So you'll see here is my actual payment portal. I've got some different options here as a customer, but I can go in and look at my open layaways and invoices. And you'll see here I've got all my orders, all of my layaways actually. But at the top, I've got my two invoices. And I can make a payment on this invoice. So let's go ahead and pay $100. I'll enter my test credit card number. And a payment amount of $100. Go ahead and hit pay. And this payment gets reflected immediately on the invoice. You'll notice if I refresh, the 373 changes to 273. I can click view. That shows me all of the activity on this particular invoice. So it shows me that I've had two payments, one for $100 and one on the original payment that we made for $50. The nice thing is when I go to view the invoice, I can print it or I can email it. So if I don't have my payment portal set up, I can actually just send an email of the invoice and they can send in payment or come in to make a payment. So back to invoices, one other option here that I wanted to show you is, first of all, I have the ability to create a new invoice. So all I have to do is search for customer, and I can choose my terms. I can choose my due date. So let's say this is due April 1st. I can hit save, and at this point, I can add invoice line items. So I can say, I don't know, private class, and now it's 50. Again, I can choose. I can actually enter an account number. That's for future accounting purposes. But here I have now a new manual invoice. So now I have 3 invoices, right? Which is really powerful. Now, one more thing to set up terms of payment in the system. I can go to manage terms, and let's say I want to add a term. I want to add a net 15, due in 15 days. And I can change that to 15. Now, in my customer setup, I can actually specify different terms for the customer. So if I go look for, let's say, John, I can edit this particular customer. And if I scroll all the way down, you'll actually have a few options here. So you'll have your store account balance will show, it will show you if there's a credit limit. Again, I think I'm looking at a different customer. That's why it's showing that 0. But I can choose whatever credit limit I want to give them. And I can also choose what their terms of payment are. So my default invoice terms are right down here. You'll notice I have my 3 different payment terms. I can hit save. And now that particular customer has terms of payment set up. So again, the invoice module for specifically customers, you just go under invoices, click customers. Make sure you set your store configuration based on what I showed you at the beginning of the video. If you have any questions or have any problems, definitely reach out to our support via the live chat within CourseStore, or send in a help desk ticket and we will be more than glad to help you out. Thank you so much for watching this video.